Welcome back to The Real P3, where passion, purpose, and progress come together in animal nutrition. We're not just talking pigs anymore. This is the new era of The Real P3, pigs, poultry, and pets. Join our host, Casey Bradley, Animistic's powerhouse team of animal nutrition and health experts as they dive deep into the science and heart behind animal and pet nutrition and health. From commercial swine systems to backyard chicken flocks, from champion show pigs to your favorite couch-loving golden retriever, we're covering it all. Expect real stories, real science, and real solutions for those who feed, nurture, and innovate across species. Because here at The Real P3, we're faithfully serving through science plus heart. Subscribe now and come thrive with us.
Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon to Tracy all the way in South Africa. Although I am South African, I'm here in the US, and then we also have Aryeri from Honduras, also here in the US. I'll introduce everyone in a second, but I just wanted to welcome everyone back to The Real P3. Everybody knows who I am. I've been on here quite a few times by now. I am Chantel Pennicott, Nutrition Innovation Manager here at Animistic. And then we have Aryeri, who is new to our team, or not so new to Dr. Casey Bradley, but new to me at least. And she will be our new host for The Real P3. She is originally from Honduras, like I said, and moved to Florida, or actually South Dakota, then Florida, and then Iowa. So she just can't get away from the Midwest. She's definitely passionate about pigs, clearly. And then we have Tracy, who is, like I said, South African and a swine nutritionist who recently started OptiHog. So if each of you want to just introduce yourselves a little bit more, go, Aryeri.
So, Kate, hi everyone. I think that a lot of you maybe know me, so no, but well, I came here to United States at least 3 or 4 years ago in an internship for Smithfield, and then I feel really a lot of passion for the pigs, and I decide, okay, I can continue study this, and I decide to apply for a master degree in South Dakota State University. Then the last year I just graduate, and then I decide to go to the industry in Florida for a couple months, and then like Chantel said, the Midwest is calling my name again. So now I am here enjoying the weather, especially, and also working with the pig, the poultry, and yeah, that is my history for now, and ready to continue writing again in my new history here.
We are really glad to have you, and we're so excited to have you on the team. Tracy, you recently started OptiHog. I'm excited to hear a bit more about it. I did see you at DPP, and that's where we reconnected, but we didn't speak so much about your new venture. So,
yes. So thanks, Chantel, and hi everyone. Yeah, I did a big jump at the beginning of this year and decided to start my own business. And it was very much driven from the heart. It was something that I had been thinking about for a long time. And yeah, I decided kind of in my mid-40s, maybe it was time to take the plunge and make the change and do something for myself. I'm incredibly passionate about nutrition. Born and bred on a pig farm. My family are still very much pig farmers. So it just feels incredibly natural to me. It's an environment that I feel the most at home in. And so, yeah, just as always been something from when I finished studying. I've always been in the pig industry, and for the most part, probably the last 10 years, very much specializing in it. So this is I'm 11 months into being self-employed.
Almost a year, almost the birthday. Yeah. So that's exciting.
Yeah, exactly.
What actually brought about this episode, Tracy and Aryeri may not even know this, is when after we reconnected at DPP, we started just exchanging emails, speaking about different feed additives, questions from South Africa, from a US perspective. Maybe Aryeri will have a different perspective as well. So I just think it's really cool that we are able these days to exchange that information a lot more efficiently than in the past, and just be open with each other. And, you know, the purpose or the title of this episode is Less is More. So we'll get a little bit into that in a second. But yeah, I just wanted to speak a bit more about why this episode came about.
Well, let's start with the first question that will come from me, Tracy. You are saying, or a lot of people is saying that less is more, but when it's coming to nutrition, what do you mean, or what do people means that less is more?
So, how I kind of feel it's come about is that I think as an industry, and the way the world is moving in every industry, right? There's just so much knowledge and there's so much technology around and available for us. And genetically, our animals are just improving depending on, which company you work with on the genetic front. There's just improvement all the time. And it feels a little bit like we're getting lost. But I feel personally that we're a little bit getting lost in trying to do better with more than just getting back to basics. An animal is an animal, and biologically, it can only give us so much. And I think if we try and push it more than what it's biologically able to do, I think we get unstuck. So my strategy this year is really to try and just break things down a bit and really go back to what I've learned 20 years ago, just the fundamental nutrition building blocks: protein, fats, fibers, energy. What is it that those animals need? And then kind of build on top of that with all the extra stuff. Chantel can attest to it. South Africa is very different to Africa, right? I think people sometimes think we're all the same, and we're really not. We're a first world country in a kind of a third world continent. But I've had the privilege of traveling into Africa, and I've seen farmers, and the results that they get in Africa is incredible. And they do it with nothing. They do
management. Yes, we actually had an episode with Philip from Zimbabwe on the importance of management.
Exactly.
Yeah,
like it's incredible, and it always brings me back to earth when I go there, and I come back and I think, oh my goodness, what can I do better for my customers to not over the formulations for them, because at the end of the day, it's costing them money, right? So how can I make sure that I can give them the best nutrition for the animals without getting caught up in the nice to haves that we're all overwhelmed with in the industry?
Okay.
And when you have so many things and you have a problem, you don't actually know, what is helping, what is hindering. You have 20 things to look at instead of 3 things to look at.
Exactly.
Actually, it's a lot of conversation between what is the difference on the management in South Africa and United States. But now the question that are coming to my mind is what will be the difference between these 3 regions in Latin America? Because I am from Latin America, and all my background in swine and all this stuff are here in United States. So I have a little bit of knowledge in Latin America. So it will be interesting to look at it, Yeah.
I think one of my biggest life lessons that I've learned now, kind of in the last few years, is that we've got to be very careful not to get caught up in recommendations that come globally, because often they're driven not necessarily because of the best interest on the animal, but there's a lot of political and government registrations and regulations in it, and that we don't always need to copy paste the rules for Europe in Africa or in America or South America. And it's difficult because you have to kind of iron that all out. But I've seen how in South Africa, there's a lot of restrictions we don't have. So it's not necessary. Yes, down the road, maybe there's time, but now you've just got to wear different hats. We've got to be careful not to get caught into prescribing and following rules that maybe aren't applicable to the environment and the state we're in.
Yeah, I mean, there's different production systems, different genetics, different feed ingredients. Using the same enzyme across the world is not going to work in different feed formulations. I could just go on and on and on. Environment, just so many different things that you got to consider when looking at feed additives. You can't just put a blanket on it because it's specific to a specific issue or problem. So. One of the emails I got from Tracy was about mycotoxins, asking about what mycotoxin binders we're using here in the US, how many we're using, which ones we're using together, all of those things. So mycotoxins binders as a nutritionist, is just a standard inclusion. It's expected that you're going to include it in there, whether you are testing your corn or your maize or not. We just kind of put it in there as an in case sort of thing. So let's unpack that. Let's speak about, keeping it simple. When do we include it? When not to? Maybe just share a little bit of background about mycotoxins. Both Aryeri and I are not mycotoxin experts whatsoever. So
I definitely don't want to put a mycotoxin specialist hat on or leave it to the salespeople. But
yeah,
experience this year has been that we even in South Africa specifically have had a very wet maize crop, and so the toxin levels from field to storage are just, it's insane. It's just everywhere. Normally at the beginning of a season it's high, and then okay, we'll get out of it and everything's going to calm down, but it's not. So there's just high levels of specifically donancia across the board, final feed and in ingredients. Obviously, it blends itself out, right? So depending on the inclusions of those specific ingredients, you're going to get different levels in the final feed. But it's overwhelming. I spoke to a friend yesterday who owns a previous company in South Africa, and just asked him, like, how many toxin binders do you have registered? And he said, well, he knows on good record that there's over 100 toxin binders in South Africa registered for use. So maybe not imported, maybe not on the floor at somebody's business, but registered to be sold into the industry. I can't fathom that. Like 100 toxin binders, it's too much for me. So my experience a little bit on the sales side, and having worn a sales hat, is I can definitely see an industry, the binders that are in use have been got onto farms because of the salespeople that have sold them. And once those mycotoxin binders are on farm, it's very difficult for farmers to change. And various platforms of the binders and what they can do. So everybody's using them. There's, I guess, on one hand, out of the 100, probably 5 in South Africa that are in use as a very, prominent use across the board, and nobody's taking them out. I had a farmer phone me a few months ago to say, what's the point? It doesn't even bind. Like, you've got the toxin binders in the feed. We test the feed, it's high. So I said to him, please don't take it out, because that'll be a disaster. Let's just leave it in, but let's figure out a way that we can try and do something else.
Yeah, I mean, I want to reiterate, I'm not attacking mycotoxin binders. They're incredibly important feed additive. It's just an example of, something that we habitually put in there, but it's like, when do you put in there? How much do you put in there? Do you put combinations in there that target specific mycotoxin binders? I mean, in South Africa, we have a huge mycotoxin problem. We have it here in the US seasonally, not all the time. And then some mills do test for it, some don't. But it goes beyond, it coming from the farms, the corn coming from the farms to the mill. It's also storage at the farm before they feed the animals. So I'm not attacking mycotoxin binders. I think they're really important, but it's when to use a single one, when to use multiple, which ones.
Yeah,
so.
Exactly. And I think that's where it gets so complicated, because it's incredibly overwhelming. And I don't think every nutritionist will have their specific ones that they prefer, but one can argue which one is going to be better and which one is going to get a better result. I'm not convinced that you're going to be able to test that. So it really has come down to, at least my experience in South Africa, is that the toxin binders in use are really because of the good salesmen that have been on the farm. But it hasn't been a nice season for us, because I get the results and we're at our max on a lot of farms, and I can't really give more. I can't say, well, let's put more binder in, because we can't just keep doing that. So it's been a struggle, but it's made us have to think a little bit differently on how we then feed the animals and how we mitigate that. In farms that are able to, where they know they have specific dirty maize, are they able to separate it and feed it to the less, to maybe feed it to their finisher pigs and not their animals in reproduction, in production state.
Nursery,
Yeah, and so to try and do that, we unfortunately also don't have a lot of other cereal grains that can kind of dilute the problem. It's maize. that's it. So it is what it is. But the toxins are coming through everywhere. It's really not just from the maize. But it's made us have to think differently. Things like almost applying a little bit of a strategy that we do in humans when it's winter and we kind of start dosing ourselves with extra vitamins and minerals. Is this maybe something we start doing on the pig side, where again you're not going to be able to exactly prove that it's working, but to just up the ingredient specs on the vitamin and minerals so that those animals have a little bit extra when they're getting an immune challenge. So yeah, a lot of, I think, alternative thinking process have come along with the toxin challenges that we've had on the farms.
Yeah. Speaking about the salesmen on the farms in South Africa, and that's how you choose your mycotoxin binder. I think it's important to know that one mycotoxin binder is not going to fix them all. I got an email yesterday from a company advertising this all-in-one fantastic, toxin binder, and I just don't see how a single product can target everything. And we are trying to keep it simple. We're not saying, you need to include 20 different things for, 20 different issues, but it's just important to note that you can't blanket them all. I do think that feed testing is really important, keeping that data, historical data, all of that stuff. I don't know. Audrey, do you have any experience with mycotoxin binders in Honduras, or I don't know?
Well, actually, I don't know that I know, maybe, but my concern now is, for example, about the overuse or misuse when we are mixing, because in some cases, what I've seen here in the United States is that we see producers adding binders almost like a routine, and without actually knowing what is the contamination level or which mycotoxin are present, So for me, it's a big concern about the overuse or misuse, because, sometimes they make the consultation for a nutritionist, they just added the binder, I add this, and especially when the diet is at low risk or have low risk, or even when the binder doesn't make a match with the type of toxin. So this is a concern for me. What do you think about this, Tracy?
Yeah, I think we have the same challenges, and I understand that it can be driven sometimes a little bit by an emotional decision, because you just want to make things better and you want to fix things right, and so you just put more in, or let's put a little bit of 3 or 4 different toxin binders, because potentially they'll have an additive effect and they'll do what they need to do together. And again, it's not having any kind of scientific approach and saying, okay, but let's do it, but what are we planning to get on the end, and let's try and evaluate. So have a strategy. That's, I think, speaks into more of my less is more, is that if we're going to introduce a feed additive, there's incredible products out there, we know that, and we see how well they work. And I'm so grateful to be in the time of the world where we are, where we have such advancement in production of these ingredients, because it adds extra value to the pigs, right? It's giving them a better growth or life, I guess, to give them more comfort. But just assess, and we need to make sure that when we're doing something and we choose a different strategy or a different approach, that we then look and say, okay, guys, we're going to give us 3 months or 6 months, and actually try and understand, is this going to work? Are we putting it in for our heart, or are we putting it in for our head?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a combination of both. Sometimes it's either or. And I worry a little bit that this is where, and this is what's so exciting for me, is that we just get back to kind of our grassroots. And I'm not saying take everything out at all. I think we have to embrace what we have, but just to be critical on our approach and how we do it and what the outcome is.
Yes, I've seen this a lot, and for example, it's just we need to avoid the thought about just in case. We will just add it just in case, because, like for example, Tracy, do you think that creates a fails or sense of security sometimes adding binders? Like, producer might think that the binder will solve or everything, and when in the reality it depends on which toxin or we are dealing with that. And do you think that is creating a false sense about the binders?
I definitely think so. I think, it's this whole strategy of us as nutritionists. I think we can over engineer things a little bit. We can get very technical because we're all very scientific brained, right? This is why we do what we do, and we formulate to the third decimal point. We put all these additional additives in because this is what's going to happen, and then you get to the farm and the wrong formulation has gone into the wrong feed bin, and you're not a grower, it's a finisher, and so all our work sitting behind the computers failed. So the safety mechanism is not even there. So we've got to try and find that balance. And for me, it's important as nutritionists that we have to take more, I don't want to say control, that's not the word, more responsibility on a farm. I don't think we give ourselves enough responsibility for what we're producing. We formulate
hide behind the formulation computer.
Yeah, exactly. So, and the beauty for me, I mean, I've asked ChatGPT a little bit how, I'm testing the waters because I want to see if I still have a job. And I'm pretty confident that I don't think it can do it yet as well as what we can do it. And we've got to take ownership of that, and we've got to keep that because we don't want to become redundant. There's things we know as humans in nutrition and how nutrition works. It's like baking a cake, right? If you don't do the right combinations of eggs and flour and oil, the cake's not going to rise. It doesn't matter what fancy flour you have. You have to still do it in the right combination.
And then you got to take into account altitude and oven temperature. So basically farm and genetics and health status of the herd, all those things. Yeah, that's something that AI can't quite grasp.
Yeah, we can't just do the safe thing anymore. I think we've got to just get a little bit more involved and invested in the formulations and the advice that we're giving.
Yeah, I'm guilty of that. I would put, a mycotoxin binder. I'm not guilty of the AI thing, but guilty of just putting something in there just in case, because it's always the nutritionist's fault. And then I can say, oh, but it's in there, So it's not that. So we definitely need to, take more accountability and maybe be on farm more.
Back ourselves. We know what we know. So, and I think it is. It's just about backing ourselves and putting faith in what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. So I also want to pick on another feed additive, or just not even a feed additive, just an extra additive where balance matters is beta agonists. So that's a controversial topic. I wanted to speak about it, just my experience, working at the Bainsfield Swine Research Unit. We did some research on beta agonists. There were definitely some positive results, but then also, it comes at a price. So they can be powerful tools. They're not always appropriate. So I just wanted to get your opinion on how you think they work, if they're good, if they're bad.
I think if you asked me this 10 or 15 years ago, I would probably have a different answer. I think that our animals have improved incredibly in terms of their genetic ability to put on muscle, right? And for the longest time, one of the big reasons we were using the beta agonist was because we needed to get that muscle deposited at the end. A bit in practice, where we've removed it, we haven't seen massive carcass differences, to be honest. So grading has actually been fine. But where we did see it was in the feed conversion. That did get worse marginally, if you the decimal point. So I think there's still place for it, and I think it's a tool that we have at our disposal and should use where we need to and want to use it and can use it, but it's pricey, and I think I'm excited for the years ahead because I think that there's a lot of place where maybe we need to start checking and seeing commercially on multiple batches. Is this a product do we need it? Is it really giving us that extra value that it's supposed to be giving? But I'd like, we need to do it commercially and do it, repeat it and get some good results. I think next year it's one of the plans I want to do on some of the farms to try and see.
Yep.
So, yeah, Tracy, I think in that, like in the life, in nutrition, in food formulation, the balance is important and is the things that we need to take in mind. From what I am seeing in the field, beta antagonists can absolutely add value, but we need to have everything else is ready, like the diet, the health, the environmental are in good shape. Then adding a better agonist won't fix those problems, but it might even make this worse. So I've seen some cases that where producers use them like a shortcut to push performance, you know. And at the end of the cycle, and yes, you can see better results, leaner carcass and better feed efficiency. But if the animal are already under heat stress or not eating really good and consistently, that's when welfare issues start to show up. And this is the things that we need to care. So do you think that part of the misunderstanding comes from the assumption that more is better?
I absolutely, and you said such a good word, and welfare is something that I feel very passionate about it. I think as nutritionists, we really need to start speaking more about it and advocating for it, because by default, we're one of the biggest parts of the welfare, because we're creating the food, right? We are making sure those animals are getting every single bit of food, because they don't have a choice. They don't get to, and pigs specifically, they don't get to be outside. And I think better that they're not outside. We're giving them much better food inside. But more is not better. More is definitely not better. And there's this push to but I think it's a global thing, right? It's bigger. It's bigger and better, and it's about being efficient and sustainable. And sustainable, those words. I mean, I saw a LinkedIn article as well where one of the girls was talking exactly about that, and the blurred line between efficiency and sustainability, and making sure that we are balanced with that. So I always believe in my heart that farmers farm because they have an inherent love for animals, and they are the custodians of the animal welfare. And I don't believe for a moment that a farmer will ever choose to be cruel to an animal. It's not in their nature. I think it's difficult for them sometimes to get the balance right in terms of making money, because everything costs money, and so you've got to push. And sometimes that does result in having a little bit more animals stocked in a building, or keeping them a little bit longer to get them a little bit heavier, because the slaughter weights are going to be better. But to use a medicine or an additive that potentially is going to create a more negative outcome for me as a no-go, it should never be something that is done.
Yeah, I mean, we've done quite a bit of research on it. And then, I mean, during summer heat stress, we had more mortalities, more pigs down, trying to load pigs, and taking 4 hours to do something instead of 1 hour. It's also, animal welfare, but also like human welfare. And besides that, I think, we need to just find the balance and, explain the science properly, both to the consumer, to the farmer, to stakeholders, and just finding that balance of when to use it. And it certainly is a good tool if used correctly. So like the mycotoxin binders, like beta agonists, I think any feed additive is a great tool if used properly in the appropriate environment. So I think timing of any feed additive, dosage of any feed additive, but especially maybe not mycotoxins, but beta agonists, we have export considerations. So there's that. There's always the human component too. So I think there's so many things that we need to take into account, and just because you can doesn't mean that you should use it.
Correct.
Well, if everybody's happy, you don't want to speak anymore about beta agonists, we can just close from here on. So if each of you just want to share your final thoughts.
Okay. You go first, Aryeri.
Okay, well, with this conversation that we are having with Tracy and Chantel, we are learning a lot, especially that practical doesn't mean that basic. So it means that we need to do our job or work in our management, really focus on what we want. And also it's about to understanding that what truly drives the performance in the pigs, the performance in our animals, and making decisions that are sustainable and also for both for animals, for the business itself, and also for us. Because I think that all these involved can give us a really better results than just driving one thing.
Yeah, agree. A colleague of mine years ago said we always need to remember that although nutrition is 60% of the cost, it's sometimes not 60% of the problems. I think we tend to always blame nutrition because it's I guess the easiest and the first target. And absolutely it can very much be the case. But at the end of the day, it's really about having a holistic approach to pig farming, right? And for me, as one of the things I always ask when I go to pig farm with the managers is, how are the staff? Like, how's the relationship? Is everybody happy? People
Yes.
people that are not happy, it doesn't matter what business you're doing and what job you have. If you're not happy doing it and you're not being treated fairly, you're not going to do a good job. And human beings are the part of the business, right? So they're the ones that are going to make our animals grow, and they're giving our animals the food. So for me, that's such an important part of our job, is just to make sure that the humans are treated well and respected and given opportunity to grow, and also for them to understand their role, because we all play such an important part in the bigger picture, in this whole circle. Everybody's got a role, and if we can uplift each other and make each other feel valued in the business that we're in, everything's going to be better. It doesn't matter.
Also, it makes your job easier.
Now that you are saying this, it's coming to my mind one comment that when I was in Smithfield, one of the workers told me, and he said, Aryeri, if you care about the people will care about the animal. So it is important to have happy people in your farm, and this will be better. So, yeah.
I couldn't agree more. I'm so passionate about training people, but the importance of training. There's no point telling them X, Y, Z. You need to tell them why we do things. If they want to do it, they will do it well. So
exactly, and then it really does make all our jobs just a lot easier, and then the welfare of the animal is better because it's getting looked after with the person that's passionate to be there and to wake up and be proud.
And they're the ones seeing the animals every day, working with the animals every day too, so they can give you good feedback to help you with your job better.
Sorry, say it again.
No, you go.
No, I was going to say, I think that one of the I don't think we should ever stop learning. I think that there's so much that we can all learn, and Google is an incredible tool, but it's about speaking to people, and that's why I enjoy connecting with you guys and have these open relationships and discussions, and not feeling that you can't share because it's potential competitive, sharing IP, and you lose your competitive advantage. We will all do better, and our farmers will all do better if we can share and exchange knowledge. And because of biosecurity issues, when I was little, you just used to go to pig farms and just go and visit everybody, and there was no issues. Well, it probably was behind the scenes that we hadn't realized. We don't get those opportunities anymore to connect as much. So there's such value in speaking to each other and meeting each other, farm to farm or nutritionist to nutritionist, to just learn different tools and techniques that we can apply in each other's businesses.
I think the biggest takeaway from this podcast is to really just keep it simple. As an innovation manager, I can really get into the nitty-gritty of things, make things super complicated, but I think it's possible for innovation and simplicity to exist together. And I think that should really be the goal of nutritionists, farm managers, everybody from all the investors, everything. Keep it simple as possible while still pushing through for innovation. One thing that's really important is, we discuss good communication between nutritionists to your farm workers, to your general managers, everybody. So exchanging data, I think, is incredibly important. Like you said, I don't think it's going to hinder anybody's IP, to a point, obviously. But I think it'll help us all in the end. And I think we all need to work together better with that. So from less is more nutrition to data-driven decisions, it all comes down to purpose. So I really want to thank both of you. I want to welcome Aryeri to the Real P3 team, and I want to thank Tracy for sharing her experience in OptiHog. So really grateful to have you both. Really excited. I love podcast recording, so hopefully we can do one in the future.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks so much, Joe. It's been a good chat.